Thanks, Mike. We'll go ahead and get started. As Mike mentioned, please feel free to type questions into the GoToWebinar question box, and we'll answer those at the end of the presentation. I'll take about 15 minutes to take you through a high-level overview of EZContentManager. Keep in mind we won't get to see everything that the software can do, so hopefully we'll spark your interest and you can schedule a one-on-one demonstration with us. We can show you a lot more detail. But EZContentManager is what we call a browser-enabled, also called a web-enabled document management system. And what that means is users can access, manage, approve documents directly through the browser like you see here. I'm using Internet Explorer. That way, you could be anywhere you need to access the information. You might be traveling, you might be in a remote office, or even in your home office. You can get to that information. But for those users that are working inside of the Sage ERP, you can access information in EZContentManager directly from those screens. So I'll start today with an example of that application of where you can access directly from Sage. I'll use Sage 100 in the demonstration today, but keep in mind we work with all the Sage platforms like Sage 100, 300, and 500 as well. So what we do is we can add integration buttons really any place that you want within the Sage screen. So under accounts payable, I could have buttons under vendor maintenance, for example, or invoice data entry or history. It could have buttons under AR, or I could have maybe customer buttons on the customer screen. I could have buttons on, purchase order, sales order, and that way, depending on what screen you're looking at inside of the Sage ERP, you're able to access information inside of EZContentManager. So in this example, I'm looking at an invoice under invoice history here. And so here's the invoice number. My ACOM button is just down here. So if I click it, from this screen I have 4 options. The first one is add invoice. So if I needed to actually attach the invoice to this transaction, I could do it directly from the screen by using this button. So I could hit the button and I could go out and pick up my invoice, for example, and I could pick it up. It would automatically grab what's called metadata directly from the screen, so I don't have to type that in again. So it takes it right from the screen here. Then I could add that invoice into EZContentManager. Now, there are a lot of ways to bring invoices into EZContentManager. This is just one way, and I'll show you some of the other ways to bring documents in as we go through the demonstration. If I want to see the invoice, I can hit the View Invoice button. What it actually does is now it takes the invoice, let's say it's already been put into EZContentManager, and it actually takes the PDF, it'll render that, and it'll pop it open, and I can see what the invoice looks like. So it just pops open the invoice, and here it is. If I want to search the invoice, what this does is it launches EZContentManager, takes me into the document management system, and shows me the invoice inside of EZContentManager. So now I can access that invoice. I can do some other things that we'll talk about as we go through the demo, or I could just navigate directly into the EZContentManager document management system directly from here. Last button says View Workflow. So if this invoice had gone through a workflow for approval or review, I can click this to see what happened with that particular workflow. So for this one, it went through a few steps and it's been completed. We'll talk more about workflows as we go through the demonstration today. So as I mentioned, the buttons make it easy for users that are working inside of Sage. They don't really have to know a whole bunch about EZContentManager. Depending on what screen they're in Sage, they'll get information back when they start pushing those buttons. Now for users that are not working in Sage, as I mentioned, you get to the system through a browser. So I'm going to go ahead and log in with my username and password. As Mike mentioned, we support multiple companies that we call domains. So I've got 2 companies available to me that I'll log into, and I'm going to log into ABC Distribution. The nice thing about our domain company approach is that everything within a company is kept within that company. So if you have security that you've set up, you have chart of accounts, you have folder types, you have document types, everything is maintained within that company. So very similar to how it works inside of Sage. And you also have the ability to use what's called Windows Single Sign-On or Windows Active Directory. So when we can set it up so when you log into Windows, it can automatically log you into EZContentManager. So I'm going to go ahead and log in. When I do that, it takes me to my home page. And for me, the home page is the main directory. So I've got some folders that I've set up where these are the document types that I'm storing. So I've got accounts payable documents, accounts receivable, contracts, expense reports, some HR-related, human resources-related stuff. And these folders and then subfolders, of course, you'll create under that, and under that are completely user-defined. So you can logically set this up so it makes sense to you. You can really store any type of documents or any type of document that you want. We're going to focus a lot today on AP, but again, keep in mind this can be for anything. So a number of ways to bring documents into the system. We talked about, remember, the Add button on the Sage screen. Another simple way to bring in documents is to just use the Upload button directly in the browser. This allows me to upload documents into here that are already in some type of electronic format. Maybe it's a PDF document, a Word document, Excel, a picture file, a movie file. We store documents in their native format, so we can upload and store any type of document that you want. I can also scan paper documents directly from here. So if I have a scanner I have attached, I can use the scan button here. I can scan that document to PDF and then bring it into EZContentManager. So when you upload or you scan, you also have the option to select what we call a document type. So I just hit the scan button here, and you can see an example of what that looks like. So let's say I'm scanning and bringing in these are my different document types that I've set up. Maybe I'm bringing in a packing list, for example. When I select the document type, it allows me to key in that metadata. These are the properties I want to attach or associate with that document. So again, things like the customer number, maybe the customer name, the order number, these are things that I've set up for the packing list. And these metadata fields are completely user-defined. Metadata is very important because that's what we use to link documents together automatically. That's what we use to be able to search for documents. And on the invoices side, obviously we need that metadata if we're going to automatically create invoice transactions for you. So I could scan that document, turn it into a PDF. Now, the upload and the scan button work fine if you're just doing a few documents at a time. But going back to the AP invoice example, if you're capturing a lot of accounts payable invoices, maybe you probably don't want to have to type in that data. The goal is to automate the process where your invoices come into you, they get recognized automatically, that data gets captured automatically, and then that invoice transaction gets brought into EZContentManager and then created into the Sage ERP for you automatically. So that's what I'm going to take you through right now, an example of using what's called OCR, which stands for Optical Character Recognition, to capture the invoices and start them into that automated AP process. So with OCR, again, Optical Character Recognition, what you do is you have your vendors send you in invoices just like they do today. Some will email you invoices, some will send you paper invoices. The email ones are preferred because our system can automatically capture those emailed invoices as attachments without any user intervention and just start those into the process. The paper ones can be scanned with a local scanner, or you can use a multifunction copier scanner to scan to a folder, and our system can pick those up. So once we grab them, what we're doing is this process is called Optical Character Recognition, and it will actually basically scan those invoices or recognize those invoices. So it goes through and it picks up the fields that we want to capture from the document. So for the invoice, we want to recognize the vendor, by this case by the logo. I've picked up things like the PO number, the invoice number, the date, the amount, different things, even the freight. And these fields that we pick up from the invoice are completely user-defined. So once those fields have been identified, that invoice, along with that data, gets placed into what's called the verify module. And that's where the user will have interaction with the system. And this is where they can verify that the invoice was captured correctly and the data that we wanted from the invoice was captured correctly. So if I go back into here, let me show you what the verify module looks like here. If I go into verify, I've got two invoices that are sitting in here waiting for me to look at. The first one under status says complete, meaning it was done 100% correct. The second one did have an error that I need to double check. So I'm going to go ahead and take a look at both of these. Hit start here. So the first one pops open and I can look at the invoice here on the left. You can see on the right here, it did recognize the vendor, got the vendor number, it got the vendor name from the logo, and then it also got the metadata fields I had predefined I wanted. So like the invoice number picked up from here, it got the invoice date from here, got the amount, and it defined whether or not it was a utility. So this one is all green, it's 100% correct. So if I wanted to, this one didn't have to stop and verify. When it got captured, again, whether it was a scanned invoice or it came in as an emailed attached invoice, this one could have automatically gone into EZContentManager without me having to look at it. Now the next one, it did have a question about the amount. So it basically put a yellow triangle here and said, okay, I need you to double check that that is the correct position for the amount. So if I look at it here, that is where the total amount should go. So that is correct. So I can fix it by hitting the enter button. So the next time I get an invoice from this vendor, it's not going to get stuck on that amount. It's going to, yeah, that is the correct position. And next time it will come up like this, all green, ready to go in. So you wouldn't have to fix that error. So I can hit OK, and then those two invoices will get moved into EZContentManager. Now, before I leave the tool here, I want to talk real briefly about how this works. Some of you may be familiar with OCR technology. A very common approach to OCR is what's called a template approach. Template approach is where you basically tell the system, hey, for each document you're capturing, so again, for each vendor invoice, I need to know, hey, where's the data? So I have to tell it, hey, the data's in this position, so I draw a box around it. The invoice number's here, the total's down here. So it works, but if I have, let's say I have 500 vendors, every invoice is different from each one of those vendors, I would have to have 500 different templates. A lot of work on the setup side. With our system, it doesn't use a template approach. It uses a much more efficient approach. It uses what's called a keyword approach, where we're not looking for data in a particular position on the page. We're actually looking for keywords anywhere on the page. So we're looking for the word date, the word invoice date spelled out, invoice number sign like you see here, invoice number spelled out, invoice NO. There's a table in our system with all these different possibilities. So that way, when you start feeding this thing invoices, even the first time it sees an invoice from a vendor, it does a very nice job of finding the data for you automatically. So instead of having to do every single field in a template approach, you basically just do what we call an optimization method, where it just takes you a few seconds, maybe a minute, to optimize each one of your vendor invoices. And then after that, that mask is saved, and it will be remembered forever. So every time you get a vendor invoice in, it'll be good. So that's a much more efficient approach than using the template approach, which is the way a lot of those products out there work. So I'm going to say, okay, so this one's done. We finished our 2 invoices, and now those invoices go into EZContentManager, and I'm going to go back into EZCM. And like I said, from here, now that we've captured the invoice along with that data we needed, from there, let's say those invoices, again, are non-PO invoices, and we want to route those around in a workflow because somebody needs to approve them. That can happen automatically. And our workflows can be set up any way that you like in here. So you can have a workflow for your AP invoice approval. You might have a workflow for your expense report approval, a workflow for a human resources, maybe a new hire packet that you want to route around. So the point is you can use workflows for anything. It's not restricted to just accounting or even AP-related stuff. Now for the AP invoice workflow, when we set it up, you can decide all the aspects as well. You can decide, okay, how many steps are there in the workflow? Is there 1 approval step, or there 2 steps, 5 steps? You can decide who the participants are at each step. Okay, step 1, this person's got to approve. Step 2, it's these other 2 people. We can also do what we call dynamic routing based on metadata, where we can use any of that data that we captured to use that to make decisions about how the document's going to get routed. So as an example, we could set it up to say, okay, maybe it's step 1 in the workflow. If it's over a certain dollar amount, it's over $500, it goes to this person, not this other person. So you have to look at the higher dollar ones. Then maybe at step 2, if it's from these particular vendors, what goes over to this person because they're responsible for those vendors' invoices. So that's using the data to make decisions about the routing, on the fly. We can also set certain notification methods. So if I need to approve something, the system can automatically email the participants each time they have something they need to approve. Or, we can do an email, maybe what we call consolidated, where it's one time at a set time during the day, showing them everything they have pending so far. Or, some people say, I don't want any emails. I just want to see everything I need to approve from a single screen, which you can from this process manager screen. So this is where I can see everything that's assigned or pending for me. So here's 3 invoices, a contract, and an HR document, a personnel action notice. So these are all waiting for me to approve. So now I can say, okay, let's just approve. Well, I'm going to just take one of the invoices. And this is where I can do my electronic review. So for this first step in the workflow, what we're calling location manager approval, there's really one choice. This person's going to review it, and they're going to hit the review complete button. So I'm going to go ahead and view it. So I can preview it here, or I can edit it. I'm going to edit it so I get a little bit more detail. So when I edit it, it's going to pop open the image here so I can see it. I can also see, remember, that metadata that we captured, like the invoice number, the date, the amount, the vendor number, different things. There's some optional things, like remember whether or not it was utility. I could hit drop down here to fill in some of these other things, maybe for location or department. Now, at this step in the workflow, I may want to do the geocoding, because in our example so far, remember, we captured the invoice, and the transaction doesn't exist in Sage yet. So we can actually code it outside of Sage. I can come here to my geocode button here, and I can push it, and I can actually assign a GL account and the amount. Or I can, if I don't know the account, I can look it up directly from Sage, and we can just pull all the GL accounts. And we can filter these by user, too, so you can restrict which ones can be seen. But I can select the GL account, I could put an amount, and I can, of course, do multiple ones, as many as I want, just like in Sage, to break the amount across multiple cost centers. And then you put the amounts in, and then that's got to total up to the total, and we validate the total to make sure it all totals up. And then what happens is when this invoice then gets saved and it finishes its approval process in our system, we'll automatically create the transaction for you. So we'll take all the header information along with the GL accounts, and we'll create the transaction so you don't have to key that information in. So that's that whole AP automation cycle where it's getting recognized, it's getting captured, you're coding it, and the invoice transaction is being created. So while I have the screen open, let me just talk about some other features we have in here. I have the invoice that I'm viewing in the preview window. I could also annotate it, so maybe at this step in the workflow I want to mark it up because somebody at the next step needs to see something. So I could do a text annotation, or I could highlight something that's important, or I could draw stuff on here. I could do sticky notes maybe to place text on here, or I could drop images like a stamp or a logo or something, or even a signature that I want to put on here. So you can do all those markups as well. So I've looked at it. Maybe I did some coding. Maybe I have a question. So before I do anything, maybe I want to hit the comment button here where I could send a comment out and email somebody to have them, ask them a question about the invoice before I did anything. I could add supporting documents. Maybe there's something I need to attach to this invoice before it moves on to the next step in the workflow. I could digitally sign it. Maybe that's part of my approval process where I need a digital signature, so I could do that. So I'm okay. I'm going to hit Review Complete, and then what it does now, it goes to another step in this workflow, and this one's called Department Manager Approval. So that person can do everything that I did. Maybe they're going to code it. Maybe they're going to make comments or add documents or sign it. If they have a question, they might want to send it back to the location manager with a comment. Or if they're okay with it, they're going to forward it on to the last step in the workflow, which is to the CFO. That person can do everything that the prior people had done, and if they're good with it, they'll approve it, and this particular workflow is done. So pretty simple workflow. It had 3 steps, and it's completed. But keep in mind, it's up to you. Your workflow might be 3 steps. It might be 10 steps. It's up to you. And of course, at any given step, you can set time limits and reminders. So the purpose of the electronic workflow is to keep things on time, and so things will never get lost. So that's one of the advantages of really using the electronic workflow process. So let me real quickly talk about how we find documents in here. We talked about the buttons inside of Sage, where if I'm looking at a screen in Sage, all I have to do is hit those buttons, and it brings documents back for me. If I'm working in the browser, I can do a number of different searches. I could search by document type, by the file content, that's a full text type search, by the file title, the file name, folder name. I can also do what we call advanced searches, where I'm going to search by document type, or I can build what we call a cross-document type search, where I can search using any of the metadata fields from any of the document types to build a very customized search. But let me show you document type search. I'm going to hit my drop down. So remember, these are the document types that I'd set up. So I'm storing AP checks, AR stuff, POs, different things. So let's say I am looking for the vendor invoice. So I select that document type. Then it shows me the metadata fields that we'd set up. Remember, we had invoice number, date, amount, PO number, vendor number, those types of things. So if I know some of this information, maybe I want to search by the vendor name and also a range of dates, for example. Or maybe I want to search by a certain specific invoice number and the vendor name. So I can put in a combination of these fields to drill down and get exactly what I want. If I don't know any of this information and I hit search, it's going to show me everything that matches this document type. So I might get a lot of documents. But let's say I know the invoice number. So I'm going to type in an invoice number here, and I'm going to hit search. I'm looking specifically for that invoice. So it brought back this invoice because, again, I knew the number. So now I can right-click it. Maybe I want to view it, so I can hit the preview button, and I can just open it up, and I can see the invoice here. Or, again, that's why I can maybe mark it up if I needed to. I could right-click it again. Maybe I want to email it to somebody because I need to see a copy of it or fax it to someone. Or this button here tells me that this invoice is linked to some other documents. So I click this button. I can see that the invoice is actually linked to the image of the payment. So this is where you might want to automatically link things together. Like if you have PO invoices, you might link invoice to the image of the PO, maybe image of the receiver, and then also maybe an image of the payment. So this is nice because when you search for any one of these documents, like I just looked for the invoice here, all I have to do is push this button and it shows me all the associated documents regardless of where they're stored. So it acts like a virtual stapler, puts everything together for me. This icon is my workflow icon telling me that this invoice had gone through a workflow. So if I click this, I could go back and see what happened with it, what approvals process it went through. So I can always go back and look at the historical stuff. So that's typically how people look for things. They do this document type search and they start keying in information to get exactly what they want. Now we're just about out of time for the demo portion today. A lot of things I did not get to. I'll just go real high level. We have very, very robust security in here where we can lock folders down by folder and subfolder by user or group. We also have the ability to go deeper than that to lock documents down all the way down to the individual metadata level of a document, where I can control, very specifically what a user or group can see, but once they can see it, I've got control what they can actually do with that document. We have what's called version control or version management, where you can actually keep multiple versions of documents. You can compare the differences between those versions. You can check documents in and out to facilitate making changes and creating those versions. We also have retention management for controlling what's going to happen to documents at the end of their life cycle. So if you want to set up retention policies to keep documents, let's say, for 3 years, and after that I want it to automatically archive or to delete or to move to another folder or to start into a workflow, you can do that. You can retain things based on certain calendar dates and times or by duration of times that go by. And that way you never have to worry about destruction of documents. It's all done for you automatically. So with that, I'm going to conclude the demo portion. Again, if this looks interesting, please contact us and we'll give you a much more detailed demonstration. I'm going to turn this back over to Mike and we'll conclude up the webinar. And again, if you have any questions, please type them into the GoToWebinar question box and we'll answer them at that point at the end here.
All right, thank you, David. So just to summarize a little bit of what David showed us today, we saw the full AP automation, no more manually routing for approval and keying in AP vouchers into your Sage ERP. Our OCR capture technology is accurate, it's fast, requires minimal to zero human intervention. We looked at the integration with the Sage ERP, our ACOM buttons and links, which can be added to any Sage ERP screen, providing access to your related documents, access to workflow, again, from any of those Sage transaction screens you utilize. Multi-company. Each Sage company is linked to their own domain in EZContentManager, so you have one central system without compromise to your business rules, to security, to financial models, giving you complete visibility and control at headquarters. Ours is an enterprise solution. The capability to manage and process all documents throughout the organization electronically from one central location. We're web-enabled, no need to install our application on every workstation. All your users will need is a web browser. All our system and admin tools are also accessible through a browser, so you never have to install any client software. Our application compatibility, we didn't talk about this, but EZContentManager has the capability to easily integrate with your other enterprise software applications via our web services interface. There are no proprietary viewers. Your paper-based documents are scanned and stored in a PDF or TIFF formats. Any documents already in electronic format will be stored in their native application format. So all your Office applications, Word, Excel, etc., PowerPoint can be in their native format, accessible through those applications, picture files, multimedia, even engineering drawings. Whatever you have, we can store that content in its original format. And we are a complete content management solution based on security, giving you the ability to collaborate, track, manage changes to your documents and information. We securely automate and control the retention and destruction of your business records, and we do all this using your business rules. To conclude, I'd just like to call attention to ACOM's depth and breadth of experience in providing ERP software solutions for document and business process automation, which has been very wide-ranging over a 31-year history. As well as being a leading software development organization, ACOM has implemented over 4,000 of our solutions in small, mid-range, and large organizations worldwide. We're forerunners in Sage ERP, integrated software, optical character recognition, content management, and business process automation. So our resources are focused on delivering the best products and services available. Our ACOM software development and professional services can help any business close the information gaps they have between their enterprise software applications, and all the unmanaged processes and data which they need to run their business. And of course, our certified Sage ERP development experience enables us to deliver best-of-breed performance in software development, integration, and support of all the Sage ERP platforms. In addition to our industry-leading document process automation solutions, we also provide end-to-end payment processing, EDI, and business form and output management solutions. All our products center on solutions to automate your manual processes, integrate with your enterprise applications, and facilitate those rapid deployments with little ongoing administration required from our client companies. So that's what we had for you today. So we'll move to answering any questions that you have, and I will turn it over to David to see what questions we have. And while I do that, and while we're answering your questions, I'd like to put our contact information up on the screen for you. So if we don't get to your questions today, or you find you have questions after the presentation, please don't hesitate to contact us. So David, anything come up from the meeting today?
Yeah, I do see two questions here. First one just says, do you support any other ERPs other than Sage?
Yes, we support a variety of ERP platforms out of the box. Certainly all the Sage platforms, Microsoft Dynamics, GP. We work a lot with IBM, iSeries AS400, JD Edwards, QAD. And if there is an ERP that we don't work with, certainly we have our web services and can provide some custom integration to those platforms.
Okay, thanks, Mike. Next question. How much does something like this cost?
For the basic Sage solution, not counting the optical character recognition, which is priced by a volume of invoices, and certainly we can talk about that more if there's interest. But we're probably looking at a starting point of around $15,000. The general range is usually in that $20,000 to $25,000 with implementation, training, and such.
Okay, it looks like that's all the questions I see, Mike.
Okay, well, great. Thanks, David. Looks like we're finishing up right on time today. I'd like to thank everyone for attending the presentation today. In the next couple of days, we will send you a link to a recording of the presentation, so if you'd like to share that with others or view it again, you may do so. Again, thank you everyone for attending. If there's additional interest, please contact us. We'll be happy to set up another meeting, learn more about your project, and give you a more personalized demonstration of the software. We hope everyone has a great day. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks everybody.